Here now to explain is someone who knows the Georgia legal system very well, former Dekalb County District Attorney Gwen Fleming. And perhaps you could help some of the folks I was addressing why Georgia might be a little different, why a pardon, even in Georgia, doesn't come easily and it takes a lot of time. Could we start there?
Sure. So Georgia is one of the rare states where the sitting governor does not have the ability to automatically pardon someone that's been convicted of a crime. That ability lies with the Board of Pardons and Parole. And while the members are appointed by the governor, they cannot consider a pardon, or someone cannot apply for a pardon until after their entire sentence has been served, plus they have to be a law-abiding citizen for an extra 5 years. So if you have a sentence with a mandatory minimum of 5 years, that sentence must be completed, and then you need to still wait another 5 years for a total of 10 years before that person, that convicted defendant, can apply for a pardon. And then obviously it's up to the discretion of the board members as to whether it be granted. So it's a very long process, not one that is automatic, and certainly not one that lies in the hand of one person that can be executed quickly.
Just real quick, if former President Trump becomes the nominee, the trial in Georgia can continue, correct?
That is correct.
And if he wins the presidency, can the trial continue?
That is correct. I mean, I think we heard from DA Willis last night. She's looking to have a trial within 6 months. We'll see if that's practical or available given the number of defendants. Obviously, the timing is going to be dictated by motions that are going to be filed, by the judge's calendar, how well the judge is able to move the case forward. But it should be able to go forward.
So I just want to understand Georgia law. So even if he's president of the United States, the trial can continue. And if he is convicted, can he be punished if he is president of the United States? Can he be sent to jail?
So these are all unprecedented questions. We have never been in this spot before. But I think, again, the DA's focus at this point is to hold people accountable where she has evidence that they have violated the law. And we know that there will be various motions and things to try to challenge the evidence that she has. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in terms of if there is a conviction and the timing of it.
This feels like a good moment to underscore also how important it was that there were cameras in that courtroom last night, and the nation was able to watch along as to what happened. That was not the case, of course, in any of the federal courtrooms in which Donald Trump has appeared in recent weeks. So kudos to Georgia. Let's hope that's an example that others emulate. But Gwen, I wanted to ask you a little bit more. If you could tell us a little bit more about District Attorney Willis, who, of course, is at the center of this for many now in the national audience, just sort of getting to know her in recent weeks. I certainly saw a no-nonsense figure she cut last night. Talk to us about what you know of her and her reputation, but also how you anticipate she's going to handle which will be the most high-profile case of her, or frankly, almost any prosecutor's career.
So I've often said that DA Willis has been called for a time such as this. She has the experience. She has worked directly in that office, in the Fulton County DA's office, for a considerable amount of time. She knows the judges know her. And most importantly, she is very familiar with Georgia law, Georgia rules of evidence, and in particular, Georgia's RICO statutes. She is one of a few prosecutors that's been very successful in using the statute to identify enterprises and identifying the types of pattern of racketeering activity that is violative of the statute. And so what we have seen from her and what I think we will continue to see from her is a very deliberate approach towards what she believes will be justice, holding people accountable that has violated the law. And she's going to do it in a way that honors her oath and the trust that's been put in her by the residents of Fulton County. So every prosecutor's oath says that they must investigate cases without fear, favor, or affection. And so she is not going to be fearful of the attacks that have tried to be lobbied against her. She's not going to show favor for a particular party or a particular individual. She's not going to show affection for a particular outcome. She is a prosecutor that will take the law and evidence as it's been given to her, and she will follow it wherever it leads her.
So, Ms. Fleming, there are 19 indicted defendants, and we know that in Georgia, being convicted of a RICO charge carries a minimum 5-year sentence. What kind of latitude? Now, presumably not all of those defendants amount to the same level of severity when it comes to their involvement in the alleged crime. So what kind of latitude would the judge in the case have to distinguish between the kingpin in this case or somebody who had a kind of relatively minor role in it? Does that come down to the sentencing, given that there is this 5-year minimum? How does that work?
So, yes, anybody convicted of RICO would have that 5-year minimum, but additional time could be stacked based on the evidence that the judge had heard at trial in terms of culpability.
All right. Former Dekalb County District Attorney Gwen Fleming, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning and giving us some specifics on how Georgia law works. Up next.